Good morning, everybody. It's your boy D Mac. So let's talk. I want to say thank you to everybody who tunes in, who's subscribing, and who's liking and sharing this. Definitely growing. My subscribers is coming in slowly but surely, and I appreciate each and every one of you. So let's get into my topic for this morning. I want to talk about holding on to traditions, holding on to false narratives, and holding on to old talking points is holding us back and hindering our growth and our progression to move forward as a country. The comment that, well, that's how I was raised, that's no longer acceptable in our society, and we have to make sure that we are using the information that is available to us so that we can do things the right way and we don't continue to repeat the same mistakes of the past. Now, we perpetuate myths on a regular basis. I remember there was an experiment that was done, the word of mouth experiment, where you'll have a circle of people and I'll start the conversation. I'll start with the sentence and I'll whisper it in somebody's ear. Now that comment will go all the way around the room, and by the time it get back to me, it is absolutely not what I said in the beginning. And this is what happens with word of mouth and things being passed down by word of mouth. By the time it gets from one generation to the next, there's been things added, there's been things taken away, there's been things made up to make the story more interesting, and it's not a true accurate account of what really took place. And this is what hurts us, because we'll latch onto these things as if they were truth without any type of we won't do any type of research to see if that's a valid point or if what they're saying is even true. We'll just take a person at who they are and we'll take that and run with it and pass it on to somebody else. And now you have people running around in error because they didn't take the opportunity to check the information that was being given to them. They're just perpetuating these myths. And so this is where a lot of the conspiracy theory stuff comes from, these perpetuated myths, and sometimes the things are true. But how true is it based on that whole experiment of what I just explained to you guys? So see, we have to understand that not everything that we get from our grandparents and great-grandparents was true. They loved us and they gave us the information that they had, but their level of information was sufficient for their generation, not ours. And this is what people are not seeing. I knew, like back when I was coming up, the things that I heard in church are different than what I hear in church now. There's more technical insight, or the exegesis, which they call it, whenever they pull things from scriptures. This is no term that I heard ever when I was a child in church. I never heard anybody talk about exegesis. I never heard anybody talk about homiletics or hermeneutics. This is a newer, updated generation thing. And as we grow and as we progress in our society and more information becomes available to us, we can really check these things to make sure that we're credible in what we're saying. I'm real big on credibility, and everybody who's going to be imparting information and wisdom into someone else should be big on credibility as well. So we have outdated information that's still being used as today's talking points. We see it all the time, especially when it comes to black statistics. We have, what's her name? Never mind, I'm not even gonna put her name out there. But we have certain black people who are keeping black people down because they continue to use these old talking points about black men not being fathers to their children, and about black people exploiting welfare. All of these talking points have been said all throughout the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, but it's no longer true. Same thing about black men having jobs. These things are old, outdated talking points that are still being said today as if they were still happening, and they're not. They're absolutely not. And so it is up to us to change that narrative, and we have the opportunity to do so. YouTube, I thank God for YouTube, man, because YouTube gives the people, the actual people who they're trying to gather this data from, the ability to get on here and say, look, it's not what they're saying. This is not true. And when you have enough of the people getting on here and coming together and speaking out against these old, outdated information talking points, then you'll start to see that, well, maybe I need to check the stats and see if this thing is still true, what they pushing to us. It provokes thought. And so I thank YouTube for giving us that opportunity to go against those people who are pushing these old narratives. Now we have a platform to where we can change that. So I'm very thankful for that, because if we continue to go on the path that we're on, we're destined to make the same mistakes. The United States Constitution is in bad need of reform, for the simple fact that we're doing exactly what I just said. We're repeating the same mistakes over and over because we keep referring back to this old, outdated, obsolete piece of law. You look at the laws in the Constitution. Don't you know that there's still a law in South Carolina that if a black person is walking on the same side of the street as a white person and they don't move over to the other side of the street, then they can be charged? That's still on the books. It's not enforced, but it's still on the books. Go check. Like I said, I'm not going to tell you something that you can't go and check for yourself. And this is what this whole video is about. But go check it out. There's still some things on the books that are law. They may not be enforced, but they could be if they wanted to, and there's nothing we can do about it because it's still in the Constitution and it's still legally binding. So we're going to continue to be in a certain spot as long as we continue to go by this old, outdated document. It was good for the time that it was created. It was good all the way up to a certain point. But at a certain point, they understood that there was going to have to be a change. And these amendments are not getting it done. There needs to be a complete overhaul and reform of the Constitution, or we're only going to move at such a pace. This is the problems that we're facing. We can't continue to say, well, that's how I was raised, so that's just how it is. No, an old dog can learn new tricks. I'm learning new tricks. I was raised a certain way. I'm from the South. I'm from North Carolina. And there's certain things that I was taught coming up. And when I moved from North Carolina to Texas, and a lot of that North Carolina mindset I tried to implement in my things that I was doing in Texas, and people let me know real quick, no, that's not acceptable. We don't do that no more. You know, that's error teaching, and you need to get up to par. And so that's what I did. I started to check on things. I started to validate things, and I started to see that a lot of the things that we were taught, yeah, they were good for that time, but they're not good for this time at all, and they're obsolete. And this is hurting us if we don't recognize this, because we'll continue to make those same mistakes over and over again. That's all I really needed to get on here and say. I hope this sparks some thought. I hope this sparks a conversation and a discussion around the water cooler, so that we can get this narrative out there, and that so people can start to talk about this, and maybe somebody else will see what I saw, and they'll be able to change some error thinking and teaching in their life. This is what it's all about. Iron sharpens iron, man, and we can't stay closed-minded to the information that's coming out because we're stuck on some old talking points. Yo, this is your boy D-Mac, man. I'm always gonna bring it to you raw and uncut, the way it comes from my heart. And that's just how it's going to be every single time. So once again, I appreciate everybody who tunes in. I appreciate everybody who shares the content, everybody who comes in and engages with me. I'm going to start doing some lives, and I had a really good show the other day. Big J came on, and shout out to Big J, and a few other people came on, and we had a really good conversation. So I'm loving where it's going. I'm not worried about the pace. It's all good for me because I got all the time in the world. But that's neither here nor there. I appreciate y'all, love you, and you know what I'm gonna say. Sticks and stones can break your bones, but the word can always heal you.